welcome to TYA, a virtual talk segment in which professionals in TYA, that's Theater for Young Audiences, join me in celebrating this wonderful field over some tea. This is part of our month-long Playground Festival featuring brilliant new plays for young audiences and educational workshops. So check out our website and Facebook for more. My name is Gabriela and I use she, her pronouns. Today, we have the privilege of speaking with two brilliant, groundbreaking leaders in the field of theater for young audiences, the multifaceted theater maker and artistic director, Michael J. Bobbitt, and the celebrated playwright, director, and educator, Gloria Clunie. Please see their bios below for some of the wonderful things they've done. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. So before we get started, in the spirit of healing, I would like to recognize that I am zooming in from Northwestern University and this occupied land called the Chicago area, on which Northwestern University sits, is located on the ancestral homelands of the people of the Council of the Three Fires, the Ojibwe, the Potawatomi, and the Odawa, as well as the Menominee, the Miami, and the Ho-Chunk nations. It was also a site of trade, travel, and gathering and healing for more than a dozen other Native tribes, and is still home to over 100,000 tribal members in the state of Illinois. Thank you for recognizing that with me. And I would love if we could start by having you introduce yourselves and talk a little bit about what you're currently excited about and working on.
Gloria, would you like to go first?
And I catch the ball in pantomime. Yes, well, first, I'm really excited to be here. I love Purple Crayon. I had a chance to go to some of the festivals in the past year because I live in Evanston, and I also am a Northwestern alum. So I was a cherub. I got my bachelor's there and my MFA. So I guess I bleed purple maybe. So I'm really excited to be here. And this past year has been interesting. And this past couple of months, I'm working on a lot of writing. I feel for the industry so much because there's so many people who are greatly challenged in this time to just practice theater. But as a playwright, you know, I started to say have typewriter, no. Michael's laughing because he just barely remembers the typewriter, but you know what one.
It was a word processor.
A word processor. But have, you know, computer and laptop and will travel and have hunkered down before. So have been working on adapting Giraffes Can't Dance, which is a musical that will go up at Bay Area Children's Theater and Rose Theater next year. I'm trying to think, is it this year or next year? Also working on Tall Enough, which goes up at DePaul, which is about roller coasters. I love roller coasters and physics. So I'm excited about that and excited about working with the students at DePaul. And what else am I working on? The Hula Hoop Queen, Imagination Stage and Child's Play. It's this wonderful story about hula hoops. So I'm adapting those two pieces, and Tall Enough is an original piece. And then it seems like I'm doing a lot of TYA. It's in January, I masked up and went to Charlotte for Children's Theater of Charlotte. They're doing My Wonderful Birthday Suit. I had a chance. It's a play that I wrote, premiered at Chicago Children's Theater, and then and directed it there. So directed it. And what was exciting was this was my first time breaking out of, you know, my husband and I have been quarantined, like, you know, just not going out, etc. But it was exciting to go out and be in a space with live actors, even though we had a mask on. So it was 3 characters in a rehearsal room with, you know, the stage manager and myself. And what we did was a camera shoot. So the play was staged, costumed, just like, and it was in their large theater. So this is huge tree. It's, it was very exciting. It like said, there will be theater again. And as I said, there were 4 children who physically saw the show, socially distanced in this 500-seat theater. But then hundreds, actually thousands saw it, online. So it's an exciting time to see how theater is changing and how we're adapting and how we improvise and create. So that's, and I finished a big person play for that deals with Romeo and Juliet and statues, which has to do with Confederate statues that are being taken down. I'm a Southerner. And so that's what's been keeping me busy. And
Nice.
I know Mike is just always busy.
Oh gosh, so busy.
Yeah.
So and it's always good to be in the room with Gloria. We haven't actually had a chance to ever work together. We've just been in the room and had many conversations. So I was actually looking, when I texted you, I was looking back at our text conversation, just going, Gloria. So I also breathe purple, but not because I have any connection to Northwestern, but mostly because of my high school. I went to an all-boys Jesuit high school, Gonzaga College Preparatory High School. I think it's just Gonzaga College High School now, but our colors were purple and white. We actually had a saying that whenever you see purple, that's God, because we were a Catholic school. So
I'll just write that down.
Right. So one thing, Gabriela, I am not an artistic director anymore.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. I just 3 months ago, I shifted from running an arts organization, a theater in Boston, to running the state arts agency, Mass Cultural Council. So now I am the senior most position in arts and culture for the whole state of Massachusetts, and I get to give out a lot of money to arts organizations and artists every year, which is so fulfilling. It's a different use of my brain and my skills, but I'm enjoying it so much. I mean, the last week, I think this week alone, I've met with 10 different state senators, making sure they're going to support this funding that I'm asking for. Currently, we are trying to get $224 million in funding from the state to support mostly COVID relief, but general operating and projects too. So that's my day. My day is learning this new job, learning about the different sectors of the arts industry that I haven't been involved in a while, like dance and museums. We also cover sciences, and then learning about what other states are doing, and also what's happening internationally, especially in those countries that have already recovered from COVID and are sort of back up and running. But in my TYA world, I have turned a 10-minute TYA play that I was commissioned to write into a pitch for an animated series. And there is some interest. So the play was about my son. It was called Tam's Two Dads, about my son's journey having 2 dads. And he was a turtle that had a gator dad and a fish dad. So, and one of his friends didn't understand how he could have 2 dads. And he started talking about the joys of having 2 dads, and she was blown away. So she started asking her parents if she can get more dads and more moms. And then, so we turned into an animated series, and we're pitching it to a bunch of different studios. And there's a lot of interest out there. I'm also final revisions for my adaptation of Robert McCloskey's Make Way for Ducklings, which I'm super excited about, that big time book. And then not TYA, but I think family friendly. I'm working on an adaptation of the Monster Mash song that takes place in high school, where a high school where humans and monsters live in the same town, but monsters reign supreme. So there's some monster supremacy issues in this play. Social commentary, but fun. And so that's my artistic world.
I have to ask, Gabrielle, do you know the song Monster Mash?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, good. Okay. That's reaching back for me too. I was like,
Well, that writer has a whole catalog of other songs that were all kind of the same sort of novelty number, but they had the same feeling. But there were some neat little stories in those songs that are informing the play.
Yeah, very theatrical, and so fun. That's so exciting. Before we get into some other questions, I would love to touch, Michael, on what led you to that incredible role, and how you have pivoted like from your previous artistic roles into running this very large organization that can fund so many projects to impact the communities around you.
Sure. I left running a children's theater in Maryland, Adventure Theater, and I moved to Boston to run an adult theater, fully anticipating changing it to Cradle and Grave Theater so that we would start producing children's theater. But I was doing that for about 16 months. And then the search firm that was seeking to replace the retired executive director from Mass Cultural Council reached out to me. I had worked with them before. They tried to place me in a couple other jobs. And initially I was like, nope, I'm not interested in being a funder. Why would I want to do that? I'm in theater. And he told me that there were several people that recommended me and just wanted to meet and sit down and talk about the job to tell me why he thought this was a good job for me. And after that meeting, it seemed like it would be a good job for me. I also can't deny that the idea of not running a nonprofit and raising money and answering to a board was very appealing. And to be able to make the room available for artists to be artists by giving them funding was so exciting. So I love it. It's only been 3 months. I haven't even reached my 100th day yet, but I really, really, really love it. And I think, right now, the pressure of, I used to have to worry about one organization getting through this COVID crisis. Now I have to worry about a whole state's worth of organizations, everything from the small community group to the large museums and science museums and children's museums and the Museum of Fine Arts. These are all grantees in my portfolio. So it's a lot, but it's very exciting. And what I'm hoping is that we can get through this recovery stage, and then I can use my experience to help the whole field grow even more.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. And I would love to circle back to some of those amazing projects you both brought up. But for now, I think it'd be really exciting to hear, hearkening to the segment's title, what is your tea of choice? And mayhaps, what are you sipping on at the moment?
Go ahead, Gloria.
I was going to say my tea of choice today is Roy Boys, and it's wonderful South African tea that my daughter introduced to me when she went and came back, and I was like, oh wow. And it's a great tea. It's an herbal tea, but it tastes like tea. So it's really good. And the other one I would say is Constant Comment, and it's a tea, since we're talking to Northwestern, that my husband, on our first date at the complex, he was running the complex. We had this on our first date. And so when we had tea instead of something else, I thought he was a classy dude. And we've been married decades now. So.
That's amazing. I love that story. I am a health nut. I only eat whole food plants. So no dairy, no gluten, no meat, no processed food. And I try to put things in my body that my body will use. And so I've just gotten into like more tea because of the antioxidants and all the other things that they offer. And so I drink a lot of tea. I drink probably 2 or 3 glasses a day. So right now I'm sipping on a turmeric ginger tea. Ooh. Turmeric is very good for the cardiovascular. Ginger is very good for digestion. And teas in general, because they are fermented, especially black teas, are good for the probiotic and the gut biomes. So it's
what's
so
the
nerdy.
Brand?
It's so nerdy.
No, Michael, what's the brand? Because I just had some. Is that? Do you remember the brand?
I'll text it to you. But I can't remember right now.
Because I just had some that was really, and I was surprised because when I was tasting thinking it was turmeric, and I was like, I'm not good, but it was really good.
Yeah, the ginger cuts the taste of the turmeric back a little bit.
Yeah, it's good.
Beautiful.
And
That
what are
sounds
you?
lovely. I'm drinking lavender tea.
Ooh.
I have really good friends, and I was sort of in my class and everything, so I'm not sure where she even got it from. But here in Evanston, very exciting. It's really delicious. I love lavender. But yes. So about all those wonderful projects you mentioned working on, I think as Northwestern students and as university students, we're always hoping we can do it all, and seeing artists like you do it all, it's really exciting and empowering. And I was wondering if there's a specific project that has brought you in your time in the field more joy or hope than ever. What did that process look like, and what was your role?
Go first, Michael.
Yeah, I will. I will. I think the project that it's kind of splitting my babies in half. This is hard, Gabriela. uh, there are two. One is I adapted Mirandy and Brother Wind into a musical, and I just think that story is so beautiful and so rich with just the joys of the contributions to culture that Black people have made. And I just was so happy about that piece. And every time I see it or read it, I'm just like, I just smile from ear to ear. But I will say the thing I think I love the most because of how meaningful it is I got the rights to Bob Marley's songs and the rights to one of his daughter's children's books, which really was an adaptation of her father's song. But so I wrote this musical called Bob Marley's Three Little Birds. It's a modern day fictional musical about a little boy who's got a beautiful head full of dreadlocks. He's very shy or timid because he's gone through hurricanes, and he is afraid of Duppy, which is the Jamaican boogeyman. And so the story is about his journey of overcoming his fears. And so he's tricked out of his home by his best friend who's named Nancy, based on Anansi the spider. And then he has to travel across the island. And so he just goes on this journey, and it's so rich with Jamaican culture, and it's very subversive in its social commentary, but the play really is again about the celebration of culture and not about the things that most plays that feature marginalized people are about. It's not about our traumas, it's about our experiences and what we've done. So I love that piece. But that piece sold out when it was at Adventure Theater. It went to the New Victory Theater in New York and it sold out. It went on a national tour. And now there are numerous productions all over the country, which is so nice to see. So I think that's just being a part of that was a big joy.
I agree when you're saying it's kind of like splitting children, and I agree with you also on Mirandy and Brother Wynn. That is one thing that we do have in common: a love for that story. Michael has a beautiful adaptation of Mirandy and Brother Wynn, which is musical, and I also have it, Mirandy and Brother Wynn, that we did at Northwestern. Northwestern commissioned it, and I agree. I love that story because it's about a Black family that's not slavery, that's not civil rights. It's at the turn of the century, cakewalking. I mean, so we have a mutual love for that story. I think right now, sometimes it's the one that's the closest that you say you love. To be honest with you, I think it's North Star. And North Star is the story of Relia, who is a young girl in North Carolina who is negotiating the civil rights period. She wants to be involved in a civil rights demonstration, and her parents support it in a way, but when danger happens, her mother says, no, you must go to the country, you can't be involved. And the father wants her to be involved, so he knows the history. And so that's the drama. And it's very much set in the civil rights period with those tensions. And a lot of, I've looked back and said, okay, is there too much trauma in it at this point? When I look, there's the discussion of lynching, there is the civil rights demonstrations. The first word is the N word in the script. But then the rest of the script is about this family's relationship and this father-daughter relationship where he shows her the stars and the skies. And he says, I reckon we'll do all right. Just got to remember, we are in the company of stars, that all the people around us are like stars. And it's on my mind because a couple of, last month, I directed it for Brigham Young University. And I will let you know that the cast is predominantly African-American as scripted and when it's done in a professional company. And let's put it this way, Utah and Brigham Young does not have a wide, they don't have a large group of African-Americans in the theater school, but they called and they really wanted to do it. They wanted, after this summer, they were looking for a drama to speak to the community in a different way. And so this was one of the first, and we did a staged reading of it on Zoom. So we took 2 weeks to rehearse and bring it up. But what was, as I said, what was exciting about it was being in the room with a group of students who had not experienced that time period in the 60s, but had just gone through it, essentially. And there's a line in there that talks about, the father talks about, I can't breathe. The play was written in 1995 about the 1963. And we, in this summer, and just 2 days ago, were revisiting, I can't breathe. So how long do we wait before we can inhale, exhale, and not have that concern? So that's why that's closed. And so actually, Eastern Michigan University did it with there are two white characters in the story, with as cast right before the pandemic started. So it was the last thing I did before the walls closed in. And then to have done it, worked with it last month. And what has changed, the prologue has changed in the last reprinting. And the prologue, there is now a prologue, a 2-page prologue, in which a predominantly white cast, or an area that has no African Americans, can do the story. And it basically says, take on this story, they add costume pieces, and they take on the characters. Dramatic Publishing printed that edition, I guess it came out maybe 2 years ago. And the first time I saw it was in Utah, the November before the pandemic. This is how we refer to life now, the November before the pandemic. And it was with an all-white cast. And so all of us were wondering, how will we negotiate this? This was the first time that I was working with it. And it was a group of high school students at Tuacahn Performing Arts, a beautiful, amazing performing arts school. And they had been a catalyst in me making that decision as far as putting the prologue there, because I was out there working on another show, Blue, and there was one African-American in that class. And I realized, and in their advanced class, and I realized she would never hear stories, do stories that reflected a lot of her history, because people were concerned about doing it. And I thought, not only was she missing a vital story for her culture, but every white student in that class was missing a part of who we are as a country. And it can't be done. I mean, I'm very much with Katori Hall when she said, what was it, Mountaintop, when they made the decision of this was several years ago, a school cast Martin Luther King as white, and the maid in the show, it's 2-character show, as Black. and she stopped the performance because she said that was not how it was intended, and wrote an amazing article about why it was appropriation, why it was not, should not have been done that way. Not all my plays could be done that way. A lot of them do deal with our journey through history, but I think trying to find windows where we can tell stories honestly about a broad range of cultures is a challenge that I think we have to negotiate now. Because there are going to be places where there's not someone you can cast. You know, you're not going to be able to cast African Americans, but should we not tell those stories? And then how do we tell those stories? Is something that I'm exploring now. That does not say go out and find an African American play and start casting it and saying that is not, that is, you know, that is a permission that you get from a playwright to say, will this work? How will it work? And why do you want to do it? But so that's where, I guess that's when you say, what's touching me now? It's because of where we are in this moment and where we are trying to understand a broader world. That North Star is on my mind. One of the children on my mind.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think that's a really important conversation that a lot of students and people right now need to have. Of course, I'm not Black, I am a light-skinned Latina, but I often find the question of, can I put on my work at this university with the bodies that are auditioning? And that can be a tremendous challenge, but I appreciate the idea of having a prologue, a self-conscious decision to say, hi, this is not necessarily the ideal way to tell this story, but it needs to be told. I think that's really brilliant and brave. I'm curious, when these stories of trauma are happening and, you know, they come into people's bodies as actors, how do you as a writer and how have you as directors been able to facilitate safe spaces that also not just allow for activism and showing people the realities of this country, but also healing for the people of color and the Black people involved?
You know, sadly, I think it's only something we've really been conscious of lately, that we are asking these actors to do these really difficult and horrific things and tell these difficult stories without thinking about their health and well-being. And I also think we haven't really thought about our audiences. You know, in American theater, most of the work that's about marginalized people reduces the story to being about the thing that makes them marginalized, which is mostly traumatic. And we expect our audiences to come and pay and see that stuff. But, you know, I think Slave Play was the first play that had counselors in the lobby to support patrons, that had counselors for the staff, I mean, for the artists involved with the project. So the last year or so I was producing, I was cognizant of that and made sure that we had people ready, sort of on retainer, if an actor needed to talk to someone, but also making sure that if we had a moment in rehearsal, we weren't going to gloss past it. We were going to let that moment, we were going to stop that moment, make sure the artists were okay, and then move on. I hadn't figured out how to do that in my plays, but I also don't write plays about people's trauma. I just don't. My contribution to the world of plays are about the cultural contributions of people of color to this world, not about the problems we've gone through. Now I've worked with the Smithsonian, and we adapted a bunch of real life museum worthy stories into plays, but even those stories were more about the contributions of people of color to the culture more than the trauma.
I think, and I agree with you, Michael, when you say it's something that we're recognizing the self-care for not only not only the actors in the room, designers, all theater artists who are working with a piece that is exploring trauma. And when I've been giving it some thought, because when I think about a lot of my work is set in a historical time. One of the plays deals with the Birmingham bombing. Another deals with the Million Man March. And I think for me, it's journeying through it. And how do we come out, and how do the characters come out whole on the other end? And hopefully by having the characters emerge whole, the audience can follow that journey. But I think just say, for instance, starting with North Star, the first word being the N word, that's already a conversation. And then that's already a journey. And then it's the why. And the experiences that I've had recently with working, and it's interesting that I've been working with North Star, directing it for that there have been several productions that I've been involved in directly. In Utah, they read inward forever. And then when I came out to start working with the workshop, I said, we have to find out why. And so we started with creating a community, a white community, a Black community that was rich and full. And you know where the ice cream shop was, you knew where, where you got your hair done, you knew who slept with who, you knew all the details of everything. And we created this, we spent time and we lived in that community, the joy. All of the white characters were white at one time. All of the Black characters, all the Black actors were white at one time. All the Black, we mixed it up. So it was the white community, the Black community, whoever was in the room, you were part of that community. And then we worked with taking away. We did an improv about what happens when someone threatens the idea of the ice cream shop going away, or this job going away, and you not being able to have your school dance the way you want it. And worked up to the word no, of saying, no, don't take it, no, 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 fear, and then substituted that word. And that's the only way that we got to the N word authentically, that it came from fear. And once the actors went through that moment and understood where it came from, where it rests in our country, we had a better understanding of not only the play, but the world in our lives. Then, of course, you have to step back and find ways to let it go. Find ways where the joys, find the starlit nights, find the stars in all of us. There really is a North Star. There really is a path through. But there are many plays of mine that are focused on joy and comedy, and maybe it has to do with also the journey that I've had of desegregating schools and growing up in the South, but being on the cusp of the end of segregation, of saying, okay, how do we deal with this? And how do we deal with it in our country? We have to deal with it. Because it doesn't get resolved if we don't.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. I really appreciate how generous you are being with your experiences and recognize that it's a lot. I really appreciate the conversation about joy, and definitely Michael and Gloria, when I read your work, a lot of it, I do feel a sense of hope that this world can be kinder.
Mm-hmm.
And beautiful and full of joy and celebration of culture. And it definitely inspires and informs not just my own work, but how I see the world around me. And I think, like, step by step, that the world can get closer to that image. In the spirit of that, I was wondering, what does a better world look like to you? Do you have a specific, maybe theatrical image of heaven on earth, or a dreamy dream, like the ultimate celebration of joy?
It's so funny because it's such a good question. And I think because we don't have a frame of reference, it's a hard question to answer. It's really, really hard. I do this. I mean, I do a lot of race equity workshops, and oftentimes in sort of BIPOC affinity spaces, we'll like get the messy parts out with some sort of rage room, and then we'll recenter ourselves. Then the next exercise is, well, how do you envision the world without racism? And it's one of those things that I find people have a really hard time to imagine because we just have never seen it before. So, and it's so pervasive. The one thing I will say is I would love a world where the idea of race is something to be revered. That because you are of different race than I am so excited about getting to know you and getting to know your culture and your beliefs and your traditions. I want to try your foods and your dances. I want to stay uniquely myself because I love my own culture, but I also want to experience yours because the curiosity that I have about race is so strong. So I want to get to that place. That to me feels like utopia. And I think we have moments of that in our society. Like I think in our theater world, like Hamilton was a bit of that for me because a lot of my rich white women friends knew every single word of Hamilton, and they got a chance to explore and experience sort of Black rap hip hop culture.
Oh, you don't know every word of Hamilton.
It's a long musical.
It
but that's the and not in a genuine fascination, not in an appropriation way, in just the idea of a melting pot scares the hell out of me. Like I don't want to be another culture. I love being Black. My son is Asian. I love the fact that he's Asian and I get to experience his culture with him. My husband is white and Jewish. I love that. I can experience his culture with him. But that's what I want. I want us to flip it and go, oh my gosh, I really want to try that or see that or experience that, because that is different than what I am and what I know. And I'm fascinated by it. That's my biggest dream. How it sort of manifests itself in sort of day-to-day actions, I don't know. I also think that word hope is a really powerful word. And to me, hope and action are two of the most powerful words we can have right now. And I think back to like the enslavement of Black people in this country, which was the biggest industry in the world. It was making so many white people very, very, very wealthy. And the fact that we ended that institution, even though we know there have been different versions of it since then, but we ended the institution where one person can own another person. That to me is how I think about racism now, that the moment I lose hope, I feel like I have sealed the deal. And to me, hope is that thing that keeps us going. Hey, we can end racism. We ended slavery. We ended this, we ended that. We change all the time. It's going to be hard and a lot of work, but we can end it.
It's good hearing you speak, having it and resting in that, and resting in hope. Michael, when you said, the idea of ending racism, I looked at my computer and I had to look it up. It's actually, I wrote the line, but I just couldn't remember what it is. But in the last couple of days and before, I've been sending a quote when I'm sending emails, with my address, and it changes depending on the play. And most of the time it's the quote, because there's so many other quotes I couldn't choose from. I would just say, put a quote from one of my plays. But this is from Tulip Morrow. And it said, racism, the battle won, and our lives become a whole new adventure. And when you talk about joy, to me, that sense of, and when I do a salutation, my salutation at the end of every is peace and joy. When you're having to do, when I was trying a long time ago, trying to figure out, okay, how do you end an email? I don't know. But then it became, what would you wish for people to take with them? Peace and joy. If we can have peace within us, peace around us, and joy. Joy is not happy. Joy is that deep-seated, want to stay there and have a cup of tea kind of situation. So for me, joy would be that sense of community where we look around, we breathe, and we are open to everybody that's in the space and outside of the space. That would be really joy. And I think it goes back, I am a Christian, so that whole idea of that love that is there, that, and it's hard, I don't think joy is easy. And my image for joy, because that was but you are right, Michael, that was a hard question. I've been pondering that for a whole, like saying, oh my God, Gabriela, these are really good questions. What does joy look like? Oh, wow. What color is joy? But the image I got after I pondered it was a child laughing. When you tickle a child, or when I was a kid and being tickled, and you tickle and you just laugh and you laugh and you're laughing for no reason, but you're laughing and you're just absolutely, and then that moment when you can't laugh anymore and you stop and you breathe and you just settle into that moment. That to me is joy. That to me, and all of us have children in us. And if we don't, we need to go find them. Okay. I think if all of the Senate, we need to do TYA in the Senate and the House of Representatives.
Yes.
Michael, you need to go up there. Okay. I'm giving you a mission. You talk to senators. So I'll come with you if you want me to. Okay. We are doing a workshop for senators and Congress people, and you can throw the president in too, to explore joy and do some creative dramatics to say, where are we centered? What do we want? I think TYA should be not just theater for young people. It's for all of the young in all of us. Finding it should be part of the mission. Because it does happen, when you have parents come and then suddenly, they brought their child, but then suddenly they're like totally, that happens to me too. When I go to, I've seen my 3 little birds, you go and you're just like, and you're that kind of joy, I think is important for us as a country. Hope and joy. Maybe I'll change it to peace and joy, peace, joy, and hope.
Nice.
That's so beautiful. Thank you so much. It's really exciting because as you were speaking, I was also thinking about the plays that we have in Playground. There is this one play written by Sam Hamashima, and it's called Show You Tell. And we actually watch young people learn to celebrate each other's differences with curiosity and respect, and also recognizing when they mess up and how they can do better. I really do feel that young people have so much power to make this world a beautiful place. And I think people really underestimate that. Kids are little geniuses. Yeah.
They are.
In
Right.
there was a I don't know whether it was PBS or BBC. There was a footage on Syria and concerns in Syria. There were children who were slightly off. They were in camera range, but they weren't the focus of the story. And what was amazing in the tragedy that was happening there, in the devastation that was happening there, there was a moment of playing and a moment of laughter coming from one of the children. And I was like, my gosh, the resiliency within children, just, it's amazing.
Truly. And thank you for sharing that. To circle to TYA, could you share some dreams you have for the industry, hopes within the field, maybe short-term and long-term, that you would feel comfortable sharing?
I think the biggest hope for me, and this is something that when I was sort of actively working in it, when I was on the board for TYA USA, I just think we splinter ourselves and we divide ourselves, and it makes us not as profound as I think we are. I think about the Broadway commercial theater. Most of that is theater for young audiences. The Lion Kings, and just every single year, most of the money, most of the income coming in from those touring shows are young audiences shows. But we separate that. We separate theater for the very young, and baby theater, and children's theater, and theater performed by young people. And to me, that only makes us a little less strong. And to me, I want the industry to embrace the whole of its parts, because I think if people really know the true impact of TYA, they would see that it should be the most funded and the most celebrated, and that we start trends that adult theater should pay attention to. Because we serve so many young people, our audiences are extremely diverse. And we have been doing this sort of real diversity work for a very long time. So I think that's what I would love. I would love all these organizations to come together and say, how can we really sort of march forward as one unit and not a bunch of different troops out there?
I'll give a ditto on that. I mean, as far as making the umbrella very, very wide, very broad, and truly in all areas, in all states, recognizing that the funding needs to be there so that all children get theater, that all children don't get theater, okay? But making sure that all children see live shows, that they interface with, there are amazing plays being written that can journey a child through many phases of their life. I also think that there needs to be, as you said, all children. Having taught middle school for 3 decades, I think that there was a point when we look at children's theater companies that are looking at the very young, up to 5th grade, 6th grade, maybe 7th, 8th grade, but that whole idea of, do we stretch, our brains aren't adult brains until we're in our 20s, let's put it that way. So, technically. So that whole idea of, where's the drama for middle school? A lot of theaters are afraid of, we're going to lose the audience then. Where's the drama for high schoolers? High schoolers, yes, should be privy to much of the adult theater, but there are also stories that speak to them. And are we creating spaces for them to come and experience theater? How do we shepherd that, theater for the very young, that audience all the way through, and that student, that child, that young person, that young adult, that teen still keeps going when their parent stops driving? What will we put there, and how will we engage them to say, come, keep coming? Theater, can continue to feature your soul, your brain, as you develop. And then we'll pass them off to the regional theaters. But but yeah, I think, as you said, create a big umbrella for TYA and funding that big umbrella. And you're doing that, Michael. You're
Yeah.
so. Yes.
Yeah, well, yeah, long way to go, but yep.
Incredible though. Wow. And to speak with you, I think also at this point in your careers, it's really exciting to see how my peers and I really listen to your work and try to grapple with things that I think maybe previous generations needed to far more, in terms of like institutions like Northwestern. I would love to hear what advice you would give to young people of color, young artists of color starting out, who are still trying to build those spaces for themselves. And I mean, theater artists, writers, you name it. What advice would you give to them as artists and then as people?
You know, one of the sad truths about being a person of color in this world is that in order to really have, this is a horrible thing to say, but in many ways, success is dependent on how well you attach yourself to good white people. It's a sad reality, and it's not something that white people have to worry about. White people can be born, raised, educated, marry, die on this planet and never have to have meaningful relationships with people of color, but it's not the case for people of color. And so I would say find those people of color find those white people in your life that are social justice minded, that are equity minded, and see how you can build relationships with them. But don't settle if you can't find that. Like work really hard, and carve out the pathway, and just think about the legacy that you want to leave, and what are you doing to change the world, and what are you doing to what do you want people to say about you in the history books when your time is done. The other thing I would say is take care of yourself, like really, really take care of yourself, because this is a hard road as a person of color on this planet. And the more you can be grounded and healthy, the better you'll be able to tackle some of the difficulty that's going to come your way. The last thing I would say is live life. Find other things that you do outside of the theater world, which is the great place to make believe and have fun. But what else? That's your job. That'll be your job, and your job can infuse yourself in your life. But what else can you do to build a life? The relationships you have, the travel, the other hobbies that you have that are outside of theater. All of that is important to success.
Oh, you're so wise, Michael. You are so wise. Yes. I mean, I'm just like saying, yes, because theater has to be about something. Theater does not exist just theater. So make your life about something. What's important beyond going to the stage. When you, and life is short. Life is shorter than we think it is. And at Northwestern, you may not realize it now, but you will blink and you'll be saying, oh, wow. What do you want to say and do in the world? And how can you use theater to say it and do it? I think is important. You were asking about students of color, and I would say, there are different kinds of spaces. Sometimes we need a sacred space in which we are, for me as an African-American, say Fleetwood Jourdain Theater was a sacred space for me. It was creating African-American theater. It had a certain ethos. There are, you look at Caramu, that you look at theaters that had Luna, theaters that speak to a certain cultural experience. Don't let those disappear, because that's a unique, I call them sacred spaces. And it's not that one does, as I said, I like the world broad, and as Michael said, reaching into other cultures and being touched by other cultures and writing about other cultures and time and history. But at the same time, sometimes having a place to come home to is very, for my soul to come home to, is very important. This week was a time when I needed a place, a sacred place for my soul to come home to. Not that I don't have a lot of friends of a lot of different cultures, but I needed a place for my soul to come home and just rest for a bit. So, and joy. I love your word joy. Seek joy and make it happen. Seek joy and give it away. Make joy for yourself and package it up and give it away in bundles. So that's my advice to theater artists. Make joy and give it away.
So much wisdom from the both of you. Goodness, the time has flown by. I wish I could hear your wisdom for the whole day, but I definitely want to respect your time. So I'm going to ask 2 more quick questions if you have time for that. Does that work?
I have a 6 o'clock workshop.
Okay. I will be so fast.
Okay.
First of all, is there anything else you would like to share with us that you have not already done? So things that you would like to put out into the space? Doesn't have to.
One. Right. Yeah. One, I want to apologize to all the young people. Sorry, we promised to make the world better. We didn't quite do that. In fact, we might have made it worse. So I'm sorry for that. It's your job to fix it now. And so I wish you well. And I think what we need are pioneers. And pioneering is dangerous, but we need it. We need you young people to have new ideas, because what we learned back in the late 1900s. And and the planet is yours. And so decide what you want theater to look like and make it happen. Make it happen.
Wow.
And I'm just going to say thank you for making it happen in advance. Thank you for the students that I've run into at Northwestern. And some of my students actually went from 8th grade and they went to Northwestern in the theater department. I'm going to say thank you. I've met some amazing people creating some amazing stories, and just, keep, and the fact that you have Purple Crayon, that you have, what are the other, there are 2 other, because I went to a conference, Seesaw, I mean, just, and these were student created theaters that, and some of them have gone on to, like, I think there's a Seesaw, similar Seesaw in New York that a Northwestern student packed up and, took the model there too. So just keep doing amazing work. And thank you for all of the change that Michael has asked you to make. I'm just going to say thank you in advance.
Thank you so much. This has been absolutely incredible. My last question is a breather question, a fun question. So we can all heave out that joy and think about funny things. So on April 24th, Ashley Laverty's new play Where Our Stuff Goes will premiere within Playground. This piece does deal with loss and helps young people through that with care, humor, and honesty. In it, there are monsters made of piles of stuff. If you were a pile of stuff, what would you be made of? Would you have an umbrella for an arm, a cool pair of shades?
This might be a little creepy, but it probably would be Michelle Obama's clothes. I just want to be close to that woman.
Yes.
And if this country became a monarchy, I would totally be down for that.
Will you share? I love her black and white.
Oh my gosh.
Gotta share.
This is amazing. She's amazing.
Yeah. I thought it was 3 things. Michael, I'm still thinking here. I would say, and I know you asked this before and I didn't think about it, a plant. I'd have something as a plant. Maybe it's because the play I'm working on, a mini roller coaster. just for the fun. I am absolutely tone deaf, have no musical skills, but musical notes just swirling around.
Wow, like a halo.
Yeah, a little.
That's so magical.
That's what I can think of. You know, I wanted to say a big bowl of chocolate ice cream, but because Michael is sitting here and I know he is so healthy, I thought better and say, no, I won't add that. I'll be good.
Wow, that's incredible. Thank you so much for sharing that. And wow, just for everything you have brought to this conversation. I would encourage everyone tuning in to please check out the incredible works that Michael and Gloria have written and to keep posted on all their projects because they really are changing the world and we should look up to them collectively. If those watching are not already doing so, which I'm sure hopefully they are. Thank you for joining me both, and audience, thank you for joining and keep tuning into these TYA conversations. Peace, joy, hope.
Thank you.